Man tired of children on his lawn decides to take matters into his own hands. As a kid, you were probably scarred by a neighbor yelling at you to get off of his or her lawn. Well, one Virginia man found himself at his wit's end when shouting and warning signs failed to keep the neighborhood kids off of his precious lawn. Angry and desperate, the frustrated man had one more trick up his sleeve. Unfortunately, his solution was so extreme that the authorities were called in. By 2018, Brian Tucker of Sandston, Virginia felt like a caricature of an old man. He spent his mornings shouting at kids to get off his lawn and devised methods to best send the message. See, Brian lived behind a bus stop where young kids waited for a ride to elementary school. Those kids played loudly on his well-maintained yard, and worse, they often left behind trash. They don't respect other people's land, Brian said, so he called the county and they refused to do anything about it. They said it was my responsibility if the kids get hurt on my land. So Brian put up no trespassing signs. He installed cameras on his property. He incessantly asked the children to stay off his lawn. He even asked the parents to keep the kids off the lawn. Nothing worked. As the new school year approached, and with visions of liability lawsuits dancing in his head, Brian launched a plan he hoped would finally end the trespassing problem. On the first day of school, parents bringing their kids to the bus stop saw a new addition to Brian's home, a fence wrapped all the way around his yard. Then a parent touched the newly erected fence and felt a shock. Shaking his hand from the sting of the shock, the parent understood the new addition to Brian's yard, an electric fence, and he wasn't the only one to realize it. My daughter walked out and said, "He's got a fence up." Another neighbor said, then someone said it was electric, and I said, "Whoa, no. If something happens to one of those kids, they're going to have a lot of angry parents." Local parents banded together in outrage, but each parent was bothered by a different aspect of Brian's countermeasure. It bothered concerned parent Wayne Milby, for instance, that Brian didn't put up a warning sign. But Brian showed news crews that there was indeed a sign, 15 yards away from the bus stop. It was slapped on the battery that powered the fence and read, "Solar IntelliShock." It had pictures of cattle on it. Other parents noted that while the shock wasn't painful, it sent the wrong message. "I understood his concern," one neighbor below said. "I just don't think he understood the neighbor's concerns." As one parent put it, the first day of school, really? Come on now. The timing made the fence feel more malicious than a genuine protective measure, so neighbor Wayne offered an alternative solution for Brian. "You know, a regular fence," Wayne said, "probably would have worked just fine." Frustrated with Brian's fence, neighbors called the county police at 9:15 a.m. that morning. That same day, Henrico County Public Works Director Steve Yob arrived at Brian's house to inspect the fence and measure the yard. But if the fence was on Brian's property, it was completely legal. Steve's findings? Engineers took measurements and did research, he said, and Brian's yard starts further off the road from where the fence is. Where that fence was put is clearly county right-of-way. In other words, Brian had to take down the fence because it wasn't technically on his property. He did so without a fight. He made a mistake and offered to correct it, Steve said, but Brian wasn't giving in just yet. In truth, Brian didn't anticipate that parents and the community as a whole would be so outraged by the fence, but he was happy the fence started what he called an important conversation. "The message has gotten across, I'm pretty sure, to everybody," Brian told the local news. "It's all over social media, neighbors are driving by, parents are posting and talking about it." It's unclear whether Brian took the fence down permanently or just moved it back, but parents hoped he'd take after the house's previous tenant and just put out a trash can for the kids. Either way, with the word out there, Brian could give his vocal cords a rest from yelling at kids to get off his lawn. And more importantly, hopefully, the neighborhood kids could get to school without getting shocked. At Brian's house, anyway,